And so that, I mean, that could be an intervention, and the interventions are really different than what's portrayed on TV,
Right.
at least from
Yeah.
my experience and what we do. It's
Mm,
more along the line of empowering somebody, that individual, to make that choice to get
yeah.
better and have a
Yeah.
lot of support and love and, yes, boundaries in place with that. But it
Mm.
doesn't have to be an all or nothing. And
You're listening to When God Intervenes, the podcast where faith, hope, and healing come together for families with a loved one battling addiction. All right, I'm back here with Desiree King. And Desiree, I have heard things about for a long time, and they're all good things too, by the way. But I've been hearing from parents, from my pal group and other parents I've run across about Desiree and her expertise. And I finally reached out to her not too long ago, and we had a conversation. And I thought she would be a great person to interview. I thought she'd be a great resource for parents, and that she would be a good person to have on this summit. So, welcome, Desiree.
thank you, dear. I really appreciate you having me come on board, and very grateful that families have found some of the things that I've been able to help them with really helpful for themselves. So I appreciate you reaching out to me and having me on.
Well, good. I'm glad you're here. And I'm going to just read a bio here, a little bit of a bio, just to give you an introduction for people. Desiree King comes back to Wellwin Outpatient Center team with 30 plus years cross industry experience in business development and sales slash marketing, and a passion in the Washington, D.C. area, and began her career at the Washington Post while pursuing her degree in communications and George Mason University. During her 15-year tenure, she consistently performed in the top 10% of its 150-person sales team and won a Publishers Award. Desiree then decided to pursue her love of fitness, and in 2009, she became the Fitness and Wellness Director for Health Trax Fitness and Wellness Center. During her tenure, during her tenure there, she won both Heltrax's Trendsetter of the Year award in 2010, as well as Director of the Year in 2013. Desiree then decided to change career paths to continue helping others, but in a different way. She began this journey working as a regional outreach representative for a behavioral health care facility treating substance use. From there, she was recruited to help start Wellwin Outpatient Center in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, helping it to grow into one of the top programs in the area. She then assisted New Waters Recovery as they started their program. Desiree most recently supported Odyssey Behavioral Healthcare. All right. So, Desiree, I was a personal trainer for a short period of time, but
Ah,
I have been a sort of a fitness buff my whole life. And so I didn't realize that was something that we had in common.
absolutely. And I will let you know that like during my tenure there, I was the director and I had about 20 coaches that were under me, but members would come in and meet with me for 3 times and I would ask them what their goals are and what they wanted to do. You know, a lot of times it was to lose weight or regain function because a lot of our clients were older members. What I did at that point is I would create teams for them while I was there, where I was taking care of the fitness part, but if they
Uh-huh.
wanted to lose weight, I was connecting them with a dietitian that was in our building. If they had any musculoskeletal issues, I was connecting them with, sports and more physical therapy. So I just kinda created this team
Mhm.
that I felt would entirely support the client in addition to what I was doing, and that's something that I continue to do today, but I loved it. The way I got into this profession is Lewis Finch, who is the founder of Wellwin, was
Mhm.
actually one of my clients,
Okay,
and,
okay.
during that time, I was working, like, 70 hours a week and going through a divorce, so kind of transitioning to be, you know, a single mom, And
Mhm.
he said, listen, I've been working with you for a year and a half. This is what I'm going to be doing, and I'd love you to come on board. So, and I decided to do that, and I have never been happier, more fulfilled, and humble in doing the work that I've been doing and being associated with such amazing programs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have had the opportunity to come over. It's been a little while now, but I did come over to Wellwyn and met Lewis, and we've crossed paths a couple of times since, and sat in on a family session there, and got to meet the staff, got to meet Shannon, and really, Lewis is a great guy, and he's put together quite a good program there. So I'm not surprised that he recruited you.
Thank you.
Tell the viewers out there a little bit more about how you got started, what led you into working in the substance use addiction treatment area, and kind of your pathway, your journey.
Okay. Well, I will just start off in saying that working with families probably is my passion. I've been working in what's known as treatment placement for almost a decade. I've worked for individual treatment centers. I've also been a treatment placement specialist for Acadia Healthcare, which is basically a free resource to help either hospitals, clinicians, individuals, or families find higher level of care resources, either within the network that I was working within or outside. And I'm a big believer of that. I have been the family member multiple times over. It started with when I was a younger child. My mother struggled with undiagnosed mental illness and prescription drug addiction, which at that time wasn't really handled very well. We didn't have like pharmacies that would cross check. I can remember being 14, 15 years old, calling her doctor and saying she's just taking too many medications, trying to kind of be the I would say the family member that was taking care of things as I was growing up. I did leave at 18 and put myself through school, bought a house at 24, but I also supported my mom in helping co-sign a home for her so she could remain in the home after she and my stepfather divorced. During that time as well, my sister was, you know, sneaking out, drinking. She totaled a car, so she was struggling as well, and I was trying to support her as best I could. And then my mother unexpectedly died when she was 53 and I was 24. And so I kind of had to deal with all of that at a very young age and selling her house, going through probate. It was a very confusing time for me. I
Mhm.
really didn't know what resources were available to me even before she passed. And it was just a very difficult time. In between all of this, I ended up getting married, and my sister, who was struggling for many years, came and lived with me. And so she lived with me for about a year and did really well, and then went out on her own, but continued to struggle. And she ultimately ended up going to Healing Transitions, which is a program here in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is an
Mhm.
amazing program, saved her life. She did really, really well, and I'm really proud of her. I had to really kind of understand how to set boundaries for myself, which are really
Mhm.
important, and not to try and get my sister to live the life I thought she should lead, but allow her to make those decisions and be a support along the way and take care of myself. So my life wasn't swirling around what she was or wasn't doing. So I got married. I was married for about 22 years. Probably about 15 years in, my husband started struggling with alcohol use disorder. It culminated in him doing some illegal things, and financially, we paid for that. And I stood by him, supported him, did everything that I thought was the right thing to do. When everything was said and done and court was over, and he didn't receive any jail time, thankfully. But when we came back home, the first thing he did was go back in the garage and start drinking. And I knew at that point he didn't think he had a problem. And I knew at that point I did not want another shoe to drop with that.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately, I had to leave that marriage. And during all of that time while we were separated, my daughter was struggling as well. So, I was probably a little bit more I oversaw her quite a bit more than my husband did because he was still struggling when he had her, and she was kinda doing whatever she wanted to do, got involved with some bad kids. She struggled with substance use herself. She always kinda kept herself on that level of I couldn't say, "Oh, you need to go to treatment," or, "Oh, you couldn't you need to do this." And so as a mom and somebody who I wasn't in the field yet, I was terrified. I didn't know what she was doing, what she wasn't doing. Was I overreacting? Was I not doing enough? Was I being too permissive? All the things that we as family members kind of go through. And
Mhm.
I learned along the way that a lot of the things that we do that we think are really good for our children to support them are some of the things that help them continue down the path that they're going. I know everybody hears about, codependency and setting boundaries. And I think codependency has become this word that doesn't have a lot of positive connotation to it, but
Mhm.
we
Right.
we in my opinion, we are all somewhat codependent on something. So that was a huge learning experience for me during that time. She now is actually in the same field as I am. She's a
Oh,
national
wow.
rep for Summit Behavioral Healthcare, so I'm super
Oh,
proud of
neat.
her. And so I continued my journey. Definitely worked a lot with therapists, recovery coaches, family coaches along the way, which was really, really important for me to be able to see things differently and also not feel as much guilt and shame and blaming, which
Mhm. Mhm.
paralyzes us, in my opinion, and to help hold my family members accountable for, their lives and what they're doing and to help make healthier choices, where they wanted their lives to be at. So, I felt like I made a lot of progress. And then 5 years ago, I met this wonderful man, got remarried, so I went from 1 child to 4, so I have 3
Oh, wow.
stepchildren. And they're
Uh-huh.
wonderful, they're all wonderful, but one of my stepchildren struggled, was struggling with Xanax, ended up ODing, and her mother and my husband asked me to help her as well. So that was very scary as a step-parent, knowing where I should step in, where I shouldn't step in, what should I say, how do I support her, let her know I love her, and I was able to find her a small women's program. She completed that, and then I also helped her find a PHP program and where she had sober living housing, and she did that for about a year. And now she's back home and she is working and she has a great boyfriend and she's just thriving. But I mean, it's just terrifying. As a parent,
It
it's
is.
terrifying as a spouse, it's
Mhm.
terrifying as a child. Unfortunately, I've had all of those experiences, and that really is a lot of the reason why I do what I do today. When I'm working with families, I try to look at, okay, what is the best clinical fit for somebody? Is it something that a program that I'm working within can help support as far as that higher level of care? And I help
Mhm.
facilitate that. So, setting the benefits, I'm vetting out all the programs, I'm creating direct connections. So if the client does end up going there, I can support the family on the back end if there's any issues that they're having. And I also don't want the family having 100 phone calls from all these treatment centers. I want to make sure that things are going to work financially, clinically before those conversations. So I try to support the family in that way. But if that loved one is not appropriate for the program that I'm working with, I make sure they get to where they are. And
Mhm.
the other piece that I do is I'm talking to family and going, "What are you doing?" What your loved one's in treatment. They're hopefully making changes. They're going to come back. But what are you doing to support yourself? Do you need a therapist? Do you need a family coach? Do the children or or someone else in your extended family need those supports. And I find that's really important. Part of what we do well, when outpatient settings, we do a lot of work with the family. So number one, we host free screenings for anyone in the community. So anyone, an adolescent or an adult, can come in and screen with our clinical director, and we help determine what level of care that person might need. Do they just need a therapist? Do they need an outpatient program? Do they need a residential program? And if so, what type? And then the other piece is we do a lot of family work. So we meet multiple times with families, and they might be coming in and asking us, hey, what resources are there for me? Or I'm having a hard time setting boundaries. Or maybe I need some type of impact letter to help my loved one understand how this is impacting the entire family
Hmm.
and how much we love them. And so we do quite a bit of that. All of that's at no cost. And then we also have 2 free psychoeducation meetings for families a month. So any family can come in. It's led by one of our clinicians, and you can just learn about what this is and
Hmm.
what you can do and how to support yourself as supporting your client.
The background, I mean, there's so many things that you've been through, to prepare you for this. And it's unfortunate that you've had to go through some of that, experience some of that. But at the same time, it's made you, good at what you do. It's part of what's made you good at what you do. You mentioned the word codependency earlier, and I use it all the time now, and but I can remember when my son was in treatment, and I don't know, remember if it might have been when he was at the first halfway house he went to after treatment. Somebody called me, and we were having a discussion, and they brought and mentioned that I was a codependent, and it made me mad because I didn't see that, at the time, but certainly I was, and I agree with you that we all are to some extent, right? Some of us more than others.
We are,
But
and we just I mean, it's part of having a relationship,
yeah,
a loving
yeah,
relationship, and
yeah.
it's just the understanding that some of the things that we might be doing because we think being a good parent might not be appropriate at this point.
Hmm. Just thinking back about your story there and your journey, the divorce is hard on kids, and then losing your mother at such an early age, and then your sister, that's a lot, and then your daughter. I mean, yeah, but you're right. I mean, it's all scary. I've only experienced it from the parent's perspective, but I can't think of anything any more scary that I've been through. And I've been through some pretty tough things, but yeah, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever been through. So I think that's the thing that I find with parents that I work with is there's a couple of different things that come up for me. One is they do have trouble setting and maintaining the healthy boundaries. A lot of them do. And I think it comes down to there's different things, there's different emotions that come up, but fear is certainly a big one. Fear of what if I set this boundary and I stick with this firm boundary and then something bad happens, I'm going to feel like I'm to blame. That seems to be the thought process that a lot of them have. Sometimes that keeps them stuck where they are, keeps their child stuck
Mhm.
where they are. Other times it might prevent it, not only keeps them stuck, they might be further down the road with the process. In other words, their child may have already been to treatment, maybe they've been to treatment several times, but they're stuck in that pattern. But then with parents who maybe are thinking about having an intervention, a lot of times the fear kicks in and they're scared to take that step because they're scared. Again, it comes down to the fear around setting the boundaries.
So I would
What
say
kind of
sorry. I would
No,
say
that's
about
okay. You're reading my
setting
mind, I think.
I would say about setting boundaries, the one thing that
Mhm.
when I talk with families, there are all different kinds of families. So this could be a sibling, it could be husband and wife, it can be a child. But especially I would say for adolescents and young adults in particular, if, with a family, and the husband and wife or whatever that family unit looks like is are on different pages. I always talk to the family, I said, "Listen, you have to be united.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to agree on this, and you don't have to agree on everything." A lot of times I'm talking to divorced parents. So there's a lot of emotion there and, personal issues there. And I'm always saying, listen, you you just have to think in the back of your head, I'm doing this to save my loved one's life. And we
Hmm.
need to put aside these things and we need to become united because if not, your loved one's going to pit you against each other in some way or fashion. And
That's right.
Um, some people are very set really, really firm boundaries, and some people have softer boundaries or can't set any boundaries because of fear in most cases. But if you can come together and set a boundary that you 100% will not back down off of, that is the most important part because when your loved ones see that you're united,
Yeah.
then that's when they're like, "Uh-oh, I can't continue to do," pitting them against each other. They both are together on how to support me and help me. And I think that's probably one of the most important and difficult things that you can do. Uh,
Hmm.
but again, setting a boundary that you 100% will not back down from. So it can be a small boundary. Doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that huge
Yeah.
boundary.
That's
Uh,
right.
and you can work from there.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a really good point. Really, really good point because it is so important for them to be united, and they do have to find that boundary that they can agree on. And I see it quite often. It's very rare that I see if this, for example, if it's a couple with a child that's battling addiction, it's very rare that they're both on the same page with all of the boundaries. You do see it every now and then, but it's very rare. And so, getting them united around that is a big first step. I agree with that. So, in terms of maybe helping parents think through, I know you've worked in placement. What kind of things should they be looking for when choosing treatment options?
Well, I would say to kind of back up from there, if you feel like there's something that's wrong,
Mhm.
probably is.
That's
Trust your
right.
gut.
Yeah.
And depending
Yeah.
on, what type of communication you have with your child, that may be bringing in somebody independently to make a determination as opposed to the parents saying, "Hey, you have to do this." And not putting your head in the sand. 'Cause a lot of times, we don't do anything in particular until something happens, maybe
Mhm.
there's some type of arrest or they end up in the hospital or there's some type of fighting, whatever that looks like, trust your gut, number
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
Number 2, try to gain as many resources as you can. A placement specialist is really a good place to start. Also, an educational consultant can be a great place for long-term treatment. Most placement specialists are not going to incur a cost, but where educational consultants are, but depending on who the placement specialist is, most placement specialists are going to have your best interest at heart, not just try to funnel your child into a certain program. And that's really important. I would say that the second piece is look at, if you find something when you're scrolling through and you're doing Doctor Google, you're gonna see tons of things that are maybe they'll say sponsored. And those programs, have paid to be at the top of that page and may not be the best fit for you. So you need to do your due diligence when you're looking at these programs. Can you use out of network benefits? Do you have the flexibility for that? Do you need an in-network program? What's the financial affordability for you? I've seen parents spend anywhere from whatever the out-of-pocket max for benefits are to hundreds of thousands of dollars and more. So if
Mhm.
we can find the right fit the first time and make sure that there's a continual support when that loved one comes home, that is going to be really, really important and difficult. If you're looking at websites, I would say some of the things to really look for. There's a couple different terminologies. One is dual diagnosis, and the other one is dually licensed. So if your loved one really is struggling with a mental health concern and using substances as that main coping skill, which is 95% of what I see, dual diagnosis is going to be that they're going to focus mostly on that substance use, but do a little work with the mental health. Dually licensed means that curriculum is going to approach both at the same time. The other thing, you want to really see the staff on a website. So you can see who they are, what that clinical team looks like, what their expertise is. Do a lot of research, like you would, as much as you would research buying a car or buying a home,
Mhm.
do that research and ask questions. Elicit help from a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, engage in maybe Al-Anon groups or other crosstalk groups to talk about other families' experiences and programs they may have used that they thought were very good. I think just getting a ton of information and trying to decipher it from there. A lot of times we are in panic. Something has happened and
Mhm.
we need to take care of this now. And we pick the first thing that looks good.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not the most appropriate. But I will tell you that the most important piece, in my opinion, is when clients come back from treatment. They need to continue that work. You can't take a
Yeah.
child who's been in, you know, middle or high school and bring them out of that environment, send them to treatment, and bring them back into that environment with no other supports because
That's
the
right.
peer group is the same, the struggles are the same. They're really for an adolescent or young adult should be about it, and this is intimidating, a year of ongoing clinical and other supports. And I think that's the tough part because some communities have a lot of resources and some communities don't. In our community, those are growing. For primary substance use, we don't have a ton, but for mental health and co-occurring substance, we have grown quite a bit in like PHP programs, which is a partial hospitalization program, which is typically a 5-day a week program, or an IOP program, which is an intensive outpatient program, which is typically 3 days a week. So just kind of keeping in mind that, this 30, 60, 90-day program that your child is going to is not the be all end all. It's a process.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
that's
you brought up two things that I was going to ask you about, and it's just like you already know where I'm headed. And I guess we think a lot alike on some of this, but one of those things was, when I coach parents, most of the time, by the time they come to me, they're already in crisis, and there is, I will tell them, look, the first thing you need to do, or one of the first things you need to do, is to start doing your homework on picking out a place for treatment. They're like, well, he's resistant to going to treatment. And I'm like, well, at some point he's going to treatment, more than likely. So, or she. And so you need to go ahead and pick out the program now. So, that because when you're in the heat of a crisis situation is not the time to, like you were saying, to pick that program. And the other thing is that you mentioned was that, the family really doing their own work, working on themselves while their loved one is in a treatment program, so that they're not coming back to the same environment. In a lot of cases,
Mhm.
maybe they don't need to move back in at home at all, depending
Yeah.
on the circumstances. But they're going to interact with the family whether they move back into the home or not. And if the family does not understand the dynamics, they don't understand addiction, then they go right back to doing things that are not going to they're going to contribute to the problem, not the solution. Am I on the right track there?
You are exactly right. You're exactly right. And it's not that, you're saying anything to blame parents. It's more along the line, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And this is, we never as a parent think about, oh, my son or daughter is going to end up with a substance use disorder or a mental illness. But again, just having support, don't bury your head in the sand, get some support, talk to people. Because really the goal is we don't want our loved ones, especially adolescents, get to the point where something really significant happens and they end up maybe in a psychiatric hospital or, maybe in jail with charges pending. We kind of want to kind of preempt that. And with as
Mhm.
parents, we feel like we have no control over some of these things, but we have the most control over these things before our child turns 18. And we can gain the skills, the resilience, and the knowledge to support our children towards a healthier choice. And so that, I mean, that could be an intervention, and the interventions are really different than what's portrayed on TV,
Right.
at least from
Yeah.
my experience and what we do. It's
Mhm.
more along the line of empowering somebody, that individual, to make that choice to get
Yeah.
better and have a
Yeah.
lot of support and love and, yes, boundaries in place with that. But it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be an all or nothing. The bottom line is we want our children to be happy, healthy, and living full lives, that they're in control of, and they can thrive within. So I think, as a parent, that's what I've always wanted, and the parents that
Mhm.
I've spoken with really want that as well. It's nothing that you've done as a parent. It's nothing, that you could have prevented. There are things that you can do to support and enable, but unfortunately, if I put 10 parents in a room, at least 7 are going through the same thing in one capacity or another. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
this is not unusual. This is not an anomaly. This is very common, and with the
Mhm.
access and types of drugs that are available right now, it's more dangerous. I'm working with families who have a 13-year-old already using fentanyl, or I have families that, their son or daughter are using things like Delta 8 or Kratom and developing drug-induced psychosis. Methamphetamine is really popular now, and that is
Mhm.
really detrimental, to
Yeah.
cognitive health and can make
Mhm.
permanent changes there. But, it's not your fault.
Right.
It really isn't. And it's, looking at this like, "Hey, I'm doing all this work to save my child's life. I'm doing all this work so I can support them the best way possible and understand what is happening." I mean, that's the best thing you can do. It
Mhm.
really is. You can't
Mhm.
control a lot of what's going on, but you can, control what you're doing and saying and feeling, and that in itself helps support that loved one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to let go when you got so much fear going on. Sometimes it's hard to let go of those attempts to control, and we just have to help parents learn that you don't really have any control. And the best thing you can do is to work, like you said, work on yourself, work on your own understanding
Mhm,
of addiction, and just continue to heal together as a family and move forward like that.
mhm.
But man, yeah, it's a tough thing for parents for sure. Well, Desiree, do you have any? You pretty much covered it, but do you have any parting words of wisdom for the listeners?
I would just say, engage in any resource that feels right for you.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to people who are gonna support you that might have a little bit more knowledge. Personally, I'm happy to help anyone that calls me and get you to
Mm-hmm.
the right place. That's probably what I'll do for the rest of my life because I love it so much and I feel like it's super important work. But don't feel ashamed. Don't, don't hide from it. trust your gut, and just try to get as much support as you can. And that can be a therapist, it can be a family coach, it could be an interventionist, whatever that looks like for you. I would explore different options and have an open mind, just like you would if you were learning anything new.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Desiree, it's been great having you on and good
Thank you.
getting to talk with you a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for tuning in to When God Intervenes. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more families in need of hope and healing. For more resources and support, visit our website at thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. Until next time, stay strong and keep the faith.